The night the big doors closed, the city lights twinkled like tiny stars across the buildings. The night was buzzing and full of excitement because a very fancy party was happening. Inside a big hotel in the middle of the city, there was a VIP charity party. It was full of famous people, rich business people, important leaders, and reporters, all dressed up and smiling perfectly. Fancy cars were lined up outside. Photographers were everywhere, trying to take pictures. Red ropes made neat lines showing who could go in and who could not. Across the street, Keanu Reeves stood quietly. His hands were deep in the pockets of his old jacket. He had a calm, almost happy look on his face. He didn't come to get attention. Actually, he almost didn't come at all. But the party was raising money to help homeless kids, and a friend had told him it would be good if he came. Keanu didn't have a big group with him. No photographers were taking pictures of him. He didn't wear a fancy suit. He just had a quiet wish to help and hoped he could come without anyone noticing. He slowly crossed the street, moving through the crowd of people and photographers. He kept his head down. When he got to the entrance, he stood in line behind other guests, waiting for his turn. The night air smelled like expensive perfume and new leather shoes, which felt very different from the simple, kind feeling Keanu always had around him. When it was his turn, he quietly told the woman at the desk his name. She was dressed very nicely and smiled, but it was a quick, busy smile. She looked at her tablet to find his name. For a moment, everything seemed fine. But then, she frowned. "I'm sorry," she said politely. "I don't see your name here." Keanu gave her a gentle smile. "Could you check under Reeves?" he asked calmly, not angry at all. She checked again and frowned even more. She whispered to a man in a dark suit nearby. He looked quickly at Keanu and then shook his head. "I'm sorry," the woman said again, louder this time, moving to the next person. "This party is only for people on the list. No exceptions." Some people nearby looked over. Someone even giggled. A photographer lowered his camera. There was no big story here, just a man being turned away. Keanu nodded once, slowly and gracefully. He didn't argue. He didn't show any proof. He didn't call anyone important to fix it. He just stepped aside and let the next guest go in. The fancy party quickly forgot he was even there. The cold night air hit his cheeks as he walked away, but he didn't mind. It made him feel alive and real. He found a bench a few blocks away, under a flickering street lamp, and sat down heavily, his hands deep in his jacket pockets. He thought about the kids the party was supposed to help. He thought about how many of them knew the feeling of having a door closed in their face, of being told they were not important enough. He thought about how even good plans sometimes got wrapped up in pride and showing off, instead of real kindness. He sat there for a long time, watching the city breathe, feeling the loneliness and hope that lived under all the lights. He could have gone home. He could have called his agent, made a fuss, and gotten inside. But that wouldn't really change anything important. So he stayed there, thinking. And slowly, an idea started to grow inside him. It was small and soft at first, like a tiny flame in the wind. It was an idea about making a new kind of gathering. A gathering with no red ropes, no guest lists, no fancy clothes. A gathering where the only thing you needed was a beating heart. As the night got deeper, and the city lights turned into soft rivers of gold and silver, Keanu sat alone on that bench. A quiet man with a quiet dream. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to change thousands of lives, starting with his own. The gathering no one saw coming. The next morning, the city woke up under a pale, cloudy sky. The glitter of the fancy party had already faded away like a dream. The newspapers showed glossy pictures of the party. Smiling faces, sparkling dresses, big speeches, and lots of money raised. But nowhere, not even in a tiny note, was there any mention of the man turned away at the door. Keanu didn't care about that. He wasn't thinking about missed chances or newspaper stories. He was sitting at a small, old table in a quiet coffee shop. A notebook was open in front of him. He tapped a pen slowly on the table as he thought. The night before had planted something bright and stubborn in his heart. He had spent many years giving money quietly to good causes. He had helped build scholarships and supported people he believed in without asking for attention. But now he knew something important. Money wasn't enough. People needed something more. They needed connection. They needed a place where no one cared about the brand of your clothes or how much money you had. He wrote slowly, shaping the idea carefully. It would not be a fancy event. It would be an invitation. An open space. Free food. Good music. Open arms. No tickets. No lists. No special entrances. Just a gathering for anyone who wanted to come. From people in suits to street singers, from bus drivers to bankers, from people in shelters to people in tall office towers. He called it simply, The Gathering. The next few weeks were busy, but in a quiet way. Keanu used his connections carefully. He didn't call the biggest stars. He called the people who would understand. The ones who had once been locked out too. Artists, cooks, musicians, community helpers, people who ran shelters. He found a small park at the edge of the city. It wasn't used for big events, but it was loved by families, dog walkers, and old men who played chess. He paid for the permits. He asked food trucks to donate meals. He hired local bands. He printed flyers by hand. No big announcements. No huge marketing. Just whispers through shelters, libraries, community centers, street corners, and quiet online shares. The first day of the gathering arrived. The sky was gray and looked like it might rain. Keanu arrived early, wearing jeans, a hoodie, and a battered baseball cap pulled low. His heart was beating fast. He helped set up tables, stack chairs, and hang lights between the trees. A few volunteers came too, looking hopeful and nervous. They worked mostly in silence, broken by little laughs when things didn't go perfectly. At noon, the first guests started to arrive. An old woman pushing a cart full of blankets. A young man carrying a guitar case patched with tape. A mother holding two shy children. No ropes. No security checks. Just smiles and open arms. Keanu moved among them quietly, pouring coffee, clearing tables, handing out sandwiches. Nobody treated him like a movie star. Most people didn't even recognize him. He was just another helper. By the afternoon, the park was full of life. Music floated in the air. Laughter popped up everywhere. Strangers shared stories over plates of food. Teenagers taught little kids how to dance near the fountain. A retired chef gave out bowls of soup, his face shining with real joy. An old woman sang songs from when she was young. Her voice was thin but strong. A small crowd clapped and cheered like she was singing in a big concert hall. Keanu watched it all from a bench in the middle of the park. His heart was so full it almost hurt. This was the real party. This was the real celebration. No black ties. No flashing cameras. Just people, broken and shining, gathered with hope and laughter. As the sun started to set, making the sky pink and gold, an old man with a cane came up to Keanu. He sat down beside him, breathing slow and heavy. "I don't know who you are," the old man said kindly, "but thank you. Today was the first time in a long while I didn't feel invisible." Keanu looked at him, his throat tight with feeling, and smiled a deep, true smile. "You were never invisible," Keanu said softly. "You just needed a place where people remembered how to see." The old man nodded, his eyes shiny with tears. They sat together in the growing dark, two souls part of something bigger and more beautiful than they could fully understand. That night, as Keanu walked home through the sleeping city, past the fancy hotels and closed shops, He carried a quiet happiness in his heart. The doors that had closed in his face hadn't stopped him. They had freed him. Because of them, he had opened a door wide enough for everyone. When one day becomes a movement. The morning after the first gathering, the city felt different. Maybe it was the spring air. Or maybe it was something even more magical. The park still smelled a little like baked bread and coffee. Paper lanterns still swung gently in the trees, left behind but beautiful. Keanu came back early that morning, wearing the same jacket as before, his hands in his pockets, his heart beating fast. He hadn't come to check on the park. He had come because he needed to know, was it real? Not the food, not the music, but the feeling. The deep, warm feeling that something truly good had happened. And what he found surprised him more than anything. A group of volunteers, people who had come the day before just for food or because they were curious, came back again without anyone asking them. They swept the sidewalks, picked up the chairs left behind, and folded the tables carefully. An older woman who had spent the night before giving out soup was now planting flowers around the fountain. A group of teenagers, laughing loudly in the morning mist, found cans of bright paint and painted the old cracked benches with happy colors they found somehow overnight. Nobody told them to do it. Nobody promised them a prize. They did it because they had found something special, something they wanted to protect. Keanu stood at the edge of the park for a long time. He felt something so big and strong inside him that he couldn't even breathe. He realized something important. The gathering was not just his anymore. It never had been. It belonged to everyone who believed in it. The next weekend, another gathering happened. No one made posters or flyers. But the news spread in the best way, from person to person, heart to heart. This time, even more people came. More food trucks lined the streets. More musicians played their songs in the corners of the park. Kids made an art show by drawing their dreams in colorful chalk all over the sidewalks. A farmer brought crates of fresh fruits and vegetables. A barber set up a chair under a tree and gave free haircuts, his scissors shining in the sun. A retired teacher gathered kids in a small circle and told them funny stories that made them laugh so hard their bellies hurt. Through all of it, Keanu moved quietly. He didn't stand in the middle or try to be the boss. He served food. He carried heavy boxes. He wiped tables. He laughed with strangers. Some people recognized him now. Whispers followed him like a soft breeze. But no one treated him like a famous person. They treated him like something much better, a neighbor, a friend. One afternoon, when the second gathering was ending, a local reporter came to the park. She had heard stories about a movie star doing something real in a forgotten part of the city. She walked up to Keanu, holding her notebook and camera. "Mr. Reeves," she said carefully, "can I ask you why you're doing this?" Keanu looked around. He saw children running barefoot in the grass, an old man sleeping peacefully on a warm bench, a young couple sharing a sandwich and a dream. He smiled, a big, true smile that touched his tired eyes. "Because I got tired of waiting for invitations," he said. "So I decided to open the door myself." The reporter nodded, feeling something deep inside her heart. It wasn't the kind of feeling that made flashy news stories. It was the kind that felt real and true. She wrote her article that night. By the next morning, the story had spread beyond the city. News feeds, radio hosts, and tired workers shared the story like people passing a cup of water in a desert. Donations began to pour in. Little gifts from people who didn't have much but understood the value of community. A retired carpenter sent a box of hand-carved benches. A group of college students painted a big mural at the park entrance that said, "You are welcome here." The gathering grew, not like a crazy party but like a beautiful movement. It was slow, quiet, and stubborn. Keanu watched it happen with the same humbleness he always had. He knew real change wasn't about one person. It was about what happened when one person believed, and others believed with them. He also knew there would be problems. Not everyone liked the idea of a gathering where rich and poor, young and old, all mixed together. There would be people trying to stop them. But Keanu had learned something stronger than fear. He had learned that when kindness opens a door, it is very hard to close it again. And he was ready to stand in that doorway with open hands and an open heart for as long as needed. When the world pushed back, the gathering didn't die. It grew like a stubborn garden, with roots pushing deep into the cracks of the tired city. Every weekend, the park is filled with music, stories, and faces from everywhere. It wasn't about charity. It was about belonging. The homeless sat beside the rich. The lonely found friends. The forgotten found a place where their names mattered. But as the movement grew, so did the people who didn't like it. At first, their anger was quiet, like a shadow slipping between alleyways. Permits were questioned. Complaints were filed, about noise, about trash, about undesirable gatherings. Some people who first smiled about the idea of a celebrity helping the city started feeling uncomfortable. Property developers muttered about lost money and land that could be used for profit. It was the same old story, profit versus people, order versus life. Keanu heard the whispers before the letters even came. He knew the pattern. He had seen it before, where hope was treated like a threat. Still, when the official letter came asking them to limit gatherings for safety, a sharp pain hit his heart. Not because he was surprised, but because he had hoped, maybe foolishly, that this time would be different. He called all the volunteers together one cool Saturday morning. The sky was gray, and the wind promised rain. They sat on folding chairs and cracked benches, their faces full of worry. Many of them had built their lives around the gathering now. Small food businesses had started. Friendships had been made. Healing had begun. Keanu stood before them with his hands in his jacket pockets. His head was bowed a little, his voice steady but heavy. "They want to shut us down," he said simply. A soft, worried murmur ran through the crowd. "But they can't," Keanu continued, lifting his head. His eyes burned, not with anger, but with a deep, strong love. "Because this isn't just an event. It's not a celebrity stunt. It's a community. And communities don't die just because someone tells them to leave." He looked around, meeting every pair of eyes. "They forgot something," he said, a small smile on his face. "They forgot that kindness doesn't need permission." The volunteers clapped, not loudly or angrily, but steady and strong, like the start of rain on a thirsty field. They would not leave. They would not give up. If they had to move to different parks, smaller places, even empty lots, they would. The gathering was not about the place. It was about the people who chose, week after week, to believe in each other. And so, the gathering changed. They stopped saying publicly where they would meet. They moved from park to park, from lot to lot, setting up wherever they could. They called it the Moving Feast. The name stuck like a favorite song in the city's heart. Local churches offered their parking lots. Abandoned warehouses became dance halls. Empty basketball courts turned into stages for music and poetry. Each time the gathering moved, it grew stronger, more connected, harder to stop. One evening, after a gathering at an old library courtyard, Keanu sat on the steps. He watched the last of the guests leave under a sky full of stars. Beside him, Detective Laura Hayes, who had become one of the gathering's fiercest protectors, passed him a cup of warm coffee and sat down heavily next to him. "You know," she said, looking out into the dark, "when this started, I thought it would just be a nice thing for a few weekends. A good story for the papers." Keanu chuckled softly, tired but warm. "I thought the same," he admitted. Laura shook her head, smiling a little. "You started a revolution, Reeves," she said. "A quiet one. The best kind." Keanu said nothing, because deep in his heart, he knew it wasn't just him. It was every hand that lifted a table. Every voice that sang even when scared. Every stranger who stayed a little longer instead of walking away. The next day, something surprising happened. It wasn't from the city leaders or the newspapers, but from the people themselves. Hundreds of small, handwritten letters flooded City Hall. These letters were full of feelings. Grandmothers wrote about finding friends. Teenagers wrote about finding mentors. Families wrote about finding hope. None of the letters were angry or mean. They were simply stories of how people felt seen and heard. They refused to let the people in charge forget that behind every gathering was 1,000 small acts of kindness. The mayor's office tried to make things better by saying that gatherings could continue as long as they were safe and helped the community. It wasn't a huge victory, but it was enough. Keanu watched it all quietly, not looking for praise or attention. He stayed with the people, helping set up chairs, serving food, and singing with the musicians under the stars. He knew something important. Real change doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to everyone who believes a better world is possible, even when the world tells them to be quiet. And if the world tells them to be quiet, they would answer with kindness, so loud and so strong that no one could ignore it. The gathering wasn't a protest. It was a celebration. And once a celebration starts with truth and love, it's almost impossible to end. When hope doesn't stay small, it grows bigger and stronger. Summer came to the city like a long, slow song. The days were warm and golden. The nights were full of the sound of music and the breeze. The gathering moved from place to place, like a secret that people whispered about. Every weekend, somewhere in the city, tables would appear. Folding chairs were set up. Lanterns were hung between trees or over parking lots. Food cooked in borrowed pots. Guitars were tuned, and laughter filled the air. And every time more people came, the gathering became something bigger than just a local event. The story of the gathering spread, and reporters who once wrote about celebrities now wrote about something rare. Proof that kindness, when taken care of, could still grow wild and strong. News outlets wrote about the gathering. Photographers took pictures of strangers laughing together. Teachers brought their students to help. Pastors talked about it from their pulpits. Artists painted murals on walls, showing unity and hope. Keanu watched it all, humbled, like a man who planted one seed and woke up to find a forest growing around him. He didn't stand at podiums or give interviews. He simply stayed close to the people, pouring coffee, listening to stories, and carrying boxes until his arms ached. The gathering had grown beyond him now. It belonged to the whole city. It belonged to anyone who had ever felt left out and wondered if they would ever be accepted. It belonged to everyone who had felt invisible and chose to answer that with kindness instead of anger. One evening, in an old warehouse that had become part of the gathering, something happened that would become one of the most beautiful moments in the gathering story. It was late, and people were starting to go home. Keanu was stacking chairs when he heard a small voice. "Excuse me," the voice said. He turned and saw a young girl, no more than 10, standing by a folding table. She was holding a crumpled piece of paper and looked nervous but brave. "Can I say something?" she asked. Someone turned off the music. The room became quiet. Keanu nodded, stepping back so the girl could speak. She climbed onto a chair and unfolded her paper. Her small voice filled the space as she told her story. She talked about how her dad used to take her to the park before they lost their home. She talked about how scary it was to sleep in shelters, feeling invisible in a city that didn't look at them. She talked about the first night they came to the gathering, drawn by the smell of food and the sound of laughter. For the first time in a long time, they didn't just get a meal, but they felt respected. "You made me remember," she said, her voice shaking a little. "That people can be kind for no reason. That I can be kind too. And I want to help. I want to be part of it." When she finished, the room stayed silent for a moment, holding her words like something precious. Then, without anyone saying anything, the crowd erupted, not in claps, but in pure love. Keanu felt something inside him break open, a deep feeling he had kept hidden for years. The fear that no matter how much he gave, it would never be enough to fix the world. But watching that small, brave girl speak her truth, he knew something important. It was never about fixing everything. It was about fixing what was in front of you. One broken heart, one lonely night, one forgotten person at a time. After that night, the gathering changed again. The young girl became its smallest but fiercest ambassador, starting kindness clubs at schools and teaching her classmates how to serve, how to see, and how to stay when the world told them to leave. More children joined. Families who came only to eat now came early to help set up. People who once needed help now gave it. The lines between the givers and receivers began to disappear. The gathering was no longer just an event. It was a living reminder that when kindness is planted in broken ground, it doesn't grow weak. It grows wild, strong, and unstoppable. Keanu sat by the edge of the warehouse that night, watching the tables being cleaned, the chairs stacked, and the children playing in tired, happy circles. He looked up at the cracked ceiling and the stars shining through the broken windows. He smiled. This was the real celebration. Not the fancy parties or the velvet ropes. And this celebration was just beginning. When a dream becomes a legacy, seasons change. The city changed too, not in ways that can be measured by money or tourists, but in ways that matter more. Coffee shops kept free meals for people who needed them. Barbers offered free haircuts on Sundays. Teachers made kindness part of their lessons. Neighbors who once ignored each other now stopped to smile and ask how the day was going. And through it all, Keanu stayed the same. He kept showing up, quietly. He helped clean tables. He carried groceries. He listened. He stayed. One evening, almost a year after the gathering started, the community planned a celebration. It wasn't for Keanu, but for the gathering itself. The city square was filled with hundreds of paper lanterns. Long tables stretched across the cobblestones, covered in food from all over the city. Keanu arrived quietly, as usual, slipping through the crowd and offering a hand or a smile here and there. But someone must have told the organizers about him, because before he could disappear into the background, a small group of children surrounded him. Their faces shone with joy. They pulled him toward the center of the square, where a chair had been placed. A crown of flowers rested on the seat. Keanu laughed, trying to protest, but the crowd cheered. It wasn't because of his fame, it was because they loved him for choosing to stay. An old man, the same one who had thanked Keanu before for making him feel seen, stepped forward. His voice was rough but full of gratitude. "You thought you were just opening a door," he said, "but you built a bridge. And because of you, thousands of us learned how to cross it." Keanu felt his throat tighten. He bowed his head, feeling overwhelmed by the love. That night, as the celebration unfolded with music, dancing, and joy, Keanu sat at one of the long tables. He had a simple plate of food in front of him, surrounded by people whose names he knew now, whose stories he treasured. He realized that the gathering was never about one person or one day. It was about choosing, again and again, to believe in each other. To believe that the walls the world built could be torn down by hands willing to reach across them. To believe that no one is too small to matter. To believe that kindness, once set free, cannot be caged again. As Keanu stood looking out at the sea of lanterns and laughter, he closed his eyes, breathing it all in. He knew that one day, life would take him to other cities, to other things. But it didn't matter. The gathering would go on without him. It had already grown bigger than him, bigger than anyone. It belonged to everyone who had ever sat at a table and felt welcomed, not judged. And as Keanu quietly left the celebration, the laughter still echoing in his ears, he smiled a small, quiet smile. The kind of smile that belongs only to those who have built something that will last longer than they will. Because he knew now that the doors once closed to him had been a gift. They had forced him to build new doors, wider doors, doors no one could ever close again. And somewhere, in the warmth of the lanterns and the steady beat of hope, the city remembered how to be a home again. If you liked this story, tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fun adventures and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.